Savannah Johnson stood silently, looking through the bus window at the hazy New York sky in early winter fog. This city that never sleeps, once her dreamland, now appeared not as a promised land, but as a cold, vast ocean where she was just a tiny drop, unsure of where to drift. Her rough hands clenched tightly around an old suitcase, holding only a few clothes and some worn photos, keepsakes of a simple childhood. Her father, Mr. Thomas, was growing weaker each day. End-stage kidney disease had haunted him for 2 years, dragging along massive hospital bills the family couldn't pay. Every effort, working double shifts, serving tables, crowdfunding from friends, was just a drop in the harsh ocean of life. On her phone, the last message from her mother stung her heart like salt. "Your father doesn't have much time left, Savannah. You have to do something. You know that." Savannah's eyes stung. She had tried hard, but the burden grew heavier on her thin shoulders. Then, during countless sleepless nights, a strange invitation flashed in her mind. An ad sent to her spam folder that no one noticed. Special confidential arrangement. No experience required. High compensation. Life-changing. At first, she thought it was a joke or some scam. But in those final exhausted days, with nothing left to lose, Savannah clicked on the link. The story was told coldly, without color, simply saying there was a wealthy, single man needing a surrogate mother. Every detail was kept secret, only guaranteeing medical care and a fee that would help her and her family. That was when Savannah realized her life was about to turn onto an unpredictable path. The bus stopped at the bustling Grand Central Station, the hurried footsteps and busy crowds pulling her back to reality. Savannah set foot on the street, sensing the city's complexity: honking cars, dazzling streetlights, yellow taxis rushing by. She told herself, this was not just a trip, but a turning point, a final gamble to seize a chance for her father, her family, and herself. The days ahead would not be easy, she knew. But inside Savannah, a small flame never extinguished. The belief that no matter what she had to sacrifice, she would not let her father go in despair. Have you ever stood before a decision that changed your life? A risky step with an uncertain future? Leave a comment sharing your story. If you love emotional stories about strength and overcoming like this, don't forget to like and follow the channel to explore more meaningful journeys together. Love and hope always begin with the bravest choices. Jackson Reed stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse office, the city sprawling beneath him like a vast, glittering chessboard. The skyline stretched endlessly, a testament to his empire built not by charm or luck, but by ruthless calculation and unwavering focus. The man was a monument to control, his tailored navy suit sharp as the edges of the skyscrapers surrounding him, his gaze sharp, as cold and precise as the algorithms powering his tech giant corporation. He didn't believe in love, not anymore. Years of failed relationships, betrayals, and broken promises had hardened him into something almost unrecognizable. A man who built machines, but kept his heart locked behind steel walls. What he wanted now was simple: an heir to carry on his legacy, a connection purely biological, devoid of emotional mess. The soft knock at the door pulled him from his reverie. Without turning, he said, "Send her in." The assistant opened the door briefly, and Savannah stepped inside, her small frame swallowed by the cavernous office. The difference between them was striking. Where Jackson exuded cold command, she carried a fragile vulnerability, an undercurrent of desperation and hope tangled in her dark eyes. She shifted nervously, clutching the worn strap of her purse as she took a tentative step forward. Her second-hand shoes barely made a sound against the polished marble floor. her presence almost out of place in this world of steel and glass. Jackson finally turned to face her. His eyes, stormy and unreadable, settled on her with an intensity that made her throat tighten. He offered no smile, only a curt nod. "Ms. Johnson," he said, voice low and measured. "Savannah," she whispered, barely able to meet his gaze. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to the leather chair across from his imposing desk. The two sat in silence, the air thick with unspoken tension. Jackson steepled his fingers, the gesture precise, as if weighing the gravity of what he was about to say. "This is not a conventional proposal," he began, his tone clinical. "I require a woman to carry my children. Multiple children, ideally. There will be no courtship, no marriage. This is a contract, purely business." Savannah's heart pounded so loudly she feared he could hear it. Her breath caught as she tried to process the magnitude of his words. She swallowed hard. "You want a surrogate?" she asked cautiously. He shook his head slowly. "Not a surrogate in the traditional sense. You will live on my estate, maintain discretion, and fulfill this agreement. You will be compensated generously. Your medical care, housing, and family's needs will be covered. This is an arrangement, not a relationship." She blinked, the word arrangement echoing coldly in her mind. The implication settled over her like a winter chill. Jackson's gaze sharpened. "You're young, healthy, and unmarried. Your medical profile is strong. And if I'm not mistaken, you're a virgin, aren't you?" Savannah felt the room tilt. How could he know? She bit her lip, unable to lie. "Yes," she said softly. A flicker of something, approval, relief, crossed Jackson's face. That simplifies certain matters. She wanted to laugh, cry, and run away, all at once. Why me? Why had she been chosen among so many others? The thought gnawed at her, but she dared not voice it. "They see my money," Jackson said, breaking the silence. "They see my name. You see something else. Or maybe nothing at all. Which is preferable?" Savannah's voice wavered. "And if I say no, then you leave. No harm done. You will be compensated for your time. It is that simple." For a moment, the coldness of the offer clashed with the warmth that suddenly flickered in Savannah's chest, a fragile hope she barely dared acknowledge. The weight of her father's failing health, her family's desperate need, pressed down on her. She looked at the contract Jackson slid across the desk, a folder thick with clauses and figures, a lifeline wrapped in legalese. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. Half the payment is upon agreement, and the rest is upon confirmed pregnancy. And if she failed to conceive, "You'll be released," Jackson said without emotion, "but compensated." Savannah closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself. This was not what she had imagined for her life, but this was the only path left. She nodded, voice firm despite the whirlwind inside. "I'll do it." Jackson inclined his head once. "One last thing," he said softly. "There will be no turning back." As Savannah rose to leave, escorted through the gleaming halls by an impassive assistant, her mind raced with a storm of emotions. Somewhere beneath the practicality, beneath the starkness of the contract, something fragile stirred. Hope. A dangerous, reckless hope. The city lights outside the glass walls twinkled like distant stars, indifferent and eternal. Savannah stepped into the unknown, carrying a heart that dared to dream amidst the coldest shadows. The sleek black car glided silently through the labyrinthine streets of Manhattan, carrying Savannah away from everything she'd ever known and into a world that felt more like a dream or a gilded cage. The city's chaos faded behind her, replaced by the measured quiet of polished leather seats and the engine's hum. Her fingers twined tightly in her lap, clutching the small overnight bag that held fragments of her past and whispers of her uncertain future. As the car curved toward the Upper East Side, Savannah's breath caught at the sight that slowly unfolded beyond the tinted windows. There, perched atop the rolling hills, was Jackson Reed's estate, a modern fortress of glass and stone, its silhouette imposing against the twilight sky. Ornate gates, trimmed hedges meticulously sculpted, and flickering lanterns lined the winding drive as if marking the entrance to another world. The driver, a silent figure in crisp attire, opened the door without a word. Savannah stepped out, her heart fluttering in awe and apprehension. Every step she took echoed softly on the immaculate marble path, the scent of lavender and lemon polish drifting gently through the air. Paintings adorned the walls, brushstrokes vivid and raw, unlike the mass-produced prints she was used to. Chandeliers hung like constellations suspended in the high ceiling's vast expanse, casting warm light over velvet accents and polished wood. She felt like an intruder in a museum, curated for wealth and power. "Miss Johnson, welcome," said a woman's voice, calm and assured. Savannah turned to see a poised woman in crisp uniform. Ruth, the house manager, who would be her guide, her guardian in this unfamiliar realm. "Follow me," Ruth said, leading Savannah through corridors that whispered of opulence, every detail immaculate, yet somehow cold. The estate was not just a home. It was a carefully maintained kingdom, where privacy and perfection were laws. Savannah's footsteps slowed as Ruth opened the door to her suite. The room was breathtaking, a sanctuary swathed in soft creams and golds, with a king-sized bed draped in silken linens and French doors opening onto a private garden patio. Fairy lights twinkled outside, like stars trapped in delicate branches. For a moment, Savannah stood, absorbing the surreal beauty around her. This place was so far removed from the cramped apartment she had left behind, from the cramped kitchens and worn floors, etched with memories of struggle. A phone rested on the nightstand, a lifeline to the household staff, meals, housekeeping schedules, and anything else she might need. Ruth's voice was steady as she explained the rules. Medical evaluations would begin the next morning. Privacy would be respected, and Savannah was free to interact with Jackson only when she chose. "Everything here is to ensure you're safe," Ruth assured her. "But you are never obligated to do anything against your will." The words soothed something deep within Savannah, a fragile promise amid uncertainty. Later that evening, dinner was delivered to her room, salmon roasted to perfection, vibrant vegetables, and a delicate lemon tart. Savannah ate slowly, her bare feet resting on the plush carpet, eyes drifting to the stars visible through the glass doors. The silence was heavy, but not suffocating. It pressed gently against her skin, a quiet companion to the flood of thoughts swirling in her mind. Then, a soft knock broke the stillness. Savannah opened the door to find Jackson standing there, no longer clad in a suit, but in simple slacks and a dark sweater. The harsh lines of the man she'd met earlier softened in the warm glow of the room. "I thought I'd check on you," he said quietly. "Make sure you're settling in." She hesitated only a moment before stepping aside. He walked in slowly, hands in pockets, his gaze drifting over the room as if trying to make sense of this new arrangement. "It's different," Savannah admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Jackson nodded. "I know it's not typical, but you're not alone in feeling that." Her breath caught. "You're anxious?" A flicker of vulnerability passed through his eyes. "I keep wondering if I'm crazy for doing this, for trusting someone I barely know." "You're not," she said softly. "You're brave." For a suspended moment, their eyes held, a fragile bridge forming between two worlds. He stepped closer, voice lowering to a whisper. If you want to postpone anything, I will respect that. This isn't about urgency. It's about readiness. Savannah met his gaze steadily. I'm not afraid of you. Jackson's lips quirked in the faintest hint of a smile. Good. The tension shifted from cold contract to something more fragile and real. As he turned to leave, his hand brushed a stray lock of hair from her cheek. A simple gesture, but one that sent a ripple through her heart. Good night, Savannah, he said softly. Good night, Jackson, she replied, surprised by her voice's warmth. She closed the door gently, her hand lingering where his fingers had touched. In the quiet, she climbed onto the bed and inhaled deeply. The scent of lavender mingled with the cool night air, flowing through the open patio doors. For the first time in a long time, Savannah felt a fragile glimmer of hope, a feeling that this place, this man, might not just be a prison of contract and obligation, but the beginning of something unexpected. Outside, the city lights flickered against the darkness, like distant promises, and a seed of trust took root somewhere deep inside. The morning sun filtered softly through the gauzy curtains of Savannah's suite, casting delicate patterns across the room, where silence reigned like a hesitant guest. She lay awake, her mind whirling with unfamiliar thoughts and half-formed emotions, the weight of last night's encounter settling gently but unmistakably on her heart. The sterile calm of the estate contrasted sharply with the turmoil inside her, a tempest of hope, fear, and a longing she wasn't quite ready to name. She had agreed to this arrangement to save her father and secure a seemingly impossible future. But now, the man behind the contract was no longer just a distant, unyielding figure of power. He had revealed fragments of a different self, a vulnerability concealed beneath layers of precision and control. Savannah rose quietly, pulling on a soft robe and moving to the window. The garden below was still wrapped in early morning mist, the fairy lights flickering faintly like whispers of promises not yet spoken. Her fingers brushed the cool glass, tracing shapes she could not quite define, as though searching for a path through the uncertainty. The day unfolded with careful precision. The estate's physician arrived promptly, a kindly woman with gentle eyes who performed a series of tests and reassurances. Savannah answered every question with quiet strength, determined to face whatever lay ahead. Each step felt clinical and intimate, a strange dance between the body's needs and the fragile hope blossoming. Jackson was absent during the visit, respecting the boundaries they had tacitly agreed upon. Yet, even in his absence, his presence lingered, like a shadow at the edge of her thoughts. She wondered about the man behind the suit. Did he wrestle with doubt? Did he wonder if this fragile trust could survive what was to come? That afternoon, as Savannah wandered the sunlit corridors, she was alone in the vast East Wing. Lined with books and paintings, the walls seemed to breathe with history and secrets. Her footsteps echoed softly, reminding her how small she felt in this opulent world. A sudden sound startled her, footsteps approaching. She turned to find Jackson standing there, casual yet commanding in a simple shirt and slacks. His eyes caught hers, and for a moment, the veneer of control faltered. "Savannah," he said, voice low and sincere. She swallowed the lump rising in her throat. "Jackson." He stepped forward, his usual guarded expression softened by something akin to hesitation. "I wanted to see how you're doing." She nodded. "I'm managing." He smiled faintly, a rare warmth in his eyes. This isn't easy for either of us. The honesty hung between them, fragile and true. Jackson's hand reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture no longer dictated by formality, but by something deeply human. Savannah's breath caught, the moment stretching into something intimate and unspoken. "I know this is far from your imagined life," he said quietly, "but I want you to know you're not alone here. Whatever you need, I want to hear it." She searched his gaze, seeking the sincerity that flickered there. "Thank you," she whispered. They stood in silence, the space between them charged yet tender, a bridge slowly being built on trust. Later, Savannah retreated to her room, her thoughts a tangled web of emotions. She replayed the small moments, his touch, the softness in his voice, the unspoken understanding that seemed to grow between them. For the first time since arriving, the estate felt less like a gilded cage and more like a place where something fragile could take root. As she prepared for rest that night, there was a gentle knock at the door. Opening it, she found Jackson once more, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. "May I come in?" he asked softly. She stepped aside, heart fluttering. He entered slowly, the distance between them charged with an unspoken question. "I want to ask again," he began, voice gentle but earnest. "Are you certain about this?" "About everything." Savannah met his eyes, steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "I am." A tension seemed to leave his shoulders, replaced by a softness that unsettled and comforted her. "You're nervous," he observed, stepping closer. "I'm new to all this," she admitted, trembling. Jackson's hand found hers, a steady anchor. "You don't have to pretend for me. This isn't about a contract tonight. It's about trust, and I take that seriously." Her heart thrummed in her ears. "I trust you." A flicker of something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of the precarious path they were about to walk together. Jackson leaned in slowly, his lips brushing hers in a kiss that was gentle and reverent, asking permission at every moment. Savannah's breath hitched, her body responding to the tenderness with a mix of relief and longing. Minutes stretched as they lingered in that kiss, the room dissolving around them until nothing remained but the fragile bond forged in quiet vulnerability. When he finally pulled back, his eyes searched hers. "If you want me to stop, I will." Savannah shook her head softly. "I want this." The delicate dance of discovery had begun, two souls tentatively reaching out, finding solace and strength in each other's presence. As they lay side by side that night, words remained unspoken, but hearts spoke volumes. The contract was no longer ink on paper. It was becoming the foundation of something real, fragile, uncertain, but unmistakably alive. The evening air settled gently over the estate, wrapping the sprawling gardens in a silken quiet that seemed to hold its breath. Savannah sat by the large window of her suite, the glow of the city far below flickering like distant stars. Her fingers traced the rim of the crystal glass before her, nerves and anticipation warring beneath the calm facade she tried so hard to maintain. Jackson had been unusually silent throughout dinner, his gaze often lingering on her with an intensity that unsettled, yet intrigued her. The man who had once seemed so distant and untouchable was now sitting mere feet away, shadows softening the hard angles of his face. Savannah caught herself wondering what thoughts haunted those stormy eyes. When the knock came, gentle yet deliberate, her heart quickened. She opened the door to find Jackson standing there, not in his usual sharp suit, but in a simple, unbuttoned shirt and dark slacks, sleeves rolled up, as if he had shed his armor for the night. "May I come in?" he asked softly, voice stripped of its usual authority. She stepped aside, barely breathing. He entered slowly, eyes roaming the room before settling on her with a vulnerability she had not expected. "This moment," he began, voice low, I've been rehearsing in my mind more times than I can count. Savannah smiled faintly, nerves giving way to something warmer. And how did it go? Jackson's lips twitched in a brief, almost shy smile. Far better than expected. They stood awkwardly, the weight of unspoken expectations hanging heavy between them. He reached out, brushing a stray curl from her cheek, his touch feather-light yet electrifying. Savannah's breath caught, her heart pounding in rhythm with a newfound rhythm stirring inside her. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. She nodded, voice steady but soft. Yes. The transition was tender, deliberate. No haste, no pressure. Jackson's hands moved reverently, as if uncovering a sacred secret, rather than fulfilling a contractual obligation. Savannah felt herself unraveling, piece by piece, beneath the careful exploration of his touch. His lips followed a slow path from her temple, down to the curve of her neck, each kiss a silent promise of care and respect. Her body responded in ways she hadn't anticipated. Nervous fluttering gave way to warmth, spreading like dawn's first light. The vulnerability between them wove a delicate thread, binding their breaths, heartbeats, and whispered confessions. As clothing slipped away, so did the walls Savannah had built around herself. Naked and exposed, she no longer felt like a commodity, but a woman cherished for her whole being. Jackson's eyes darkened with a hunger, tempered by tenderness. "You're beautiful," he murmured, voice thick with awe. Her fingers trembled as they unbuttoned his shirt, skin meeting skin with a shiver of connection. The man who had once been a stranger, a figure of cold calculation, now felt warm and alive beneath her touch. Their bodies moved in harmony, a dance of exploration and trust. Each breath and touch was a step away from the contract and closer to something intangible yet undeniable. When he finally entered her, the moment was raw and exquisite, pain and pleasure mingling in a fragile balance. Savannah's hands clutched him, grounding herself in the sensation, in the certainty that this was no longer just a transaction. Jackson's whispered reassurances, soft breaths, and steady presence became her anchor as she surrendered to the unfamiliar yet welcome tide of intimacy. Minutes stretched like hours as they navigated the unknown together, learning the contours of desire and vulnerability. There was no rush, no expectation, only the gentle unfolding of something real. When the crescendo finally came, it released physical tension and emotional barriers that had long held firm. Savannah cried out softly, a sound of equal parts relief and revelation. Jackson followed, his groan low and full of something profound and raw. For a moment, they lay tangled in the afterglow, breaths mingling, hearts beating in quiet conversation. "I'm okay," she whispered against his chest, voice fragile yet sure. He kissed the top of her head, arms tightening around her. More than okay. Then, in the soft quiet that followed, the contract ceased to be merely words on paper. It transformed into the beginning of a connection neither had expected. A fragile, burgeoning intimacy, wrapped in trust and tentative love. As Jackson pulled the covers over them, gathering Savannah close, her head rested against his steady heartbeat. In that moment, the cold fortress of his world softened, and something beautiful took root. An unspoken promise that this was no longer just business, but the start of something profound. The days that followed the first night wove themselves into a delicate rhythm, a silent understanding threading between Savannah and Jackson. Their interactions grew softer, touched by moments of quiet intimacy that neither dared name aloud. Jackson remained the man of measured words and controlled expression. Yet beneath the surface, something was shifting, a tenderness slowly breaking through the steel. Savannah was caught between hope and fear, the fragile glow of trust shadowed by doubts she couldn't silence. Each glance from Jackson carried a weight she was unsure she deserved, and every touch lingered with unspoken questions. One crisp afternoon, the estate felt unusually still. Savannah walked the long hallways toward Jackson's office, her mind a whirlwind of emotions she struggled to tame. The doctor's words from earlier that day echoed softly in her ears. A clean bill of health, green light to begin the journey ahead. Yet the excitement that should have accompanied such news was tempered by an uneasy flutter deep within her. As she neared the heavy oak door, she heard voices, calm, controlled tones that immediately stilled her breath. She recognized Jackson's voice, steady, but laced with something unreadable. The other belonged to a man she'd only seen briefly before, the sharply dressed legal advisor, Mr. Lang. Savannah's steps faltered as she strained to catch fragments of their conversation. "The terms are clear," Lang said, measured and deliberate. "Once the children are born, she's entitled to the final installment and the property transfer you mentioned." Jackson's voice was firm. "I want her taken care of." There was a pause. Then Lang's question, "And if she chooses to stay?" Silence stretched long and heavy. "She's free to go," Jackson finally answered, voice almost a whisper. The words cracked something profound inside Savannah. She retreated silently, her heart pounding as the cold air seeped into her bones. The estate, once a sanctuary, now felt like a gilded prison. Back in her suite, Savannah pressed her back against the door, wrapping trembling arms around herself as if to hold the fragments of her breaking heart together. The man who had held her so gently, kissed her with such reverence, now spoke as if she were nothing more than a clause in a contract. She thought of how he cradled her face, the soft murmur of her name during their nights together, the fleeting smiles that seemed to promise something more. Was it all just an illusion? Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the opulent walls that surrounded her. She felt the weight of loneliness settle heavily in her chest. That night, Savannah avoided the dining room. She stayed cloistered in her room, the shadows her only companions. When Jackson knocked softly, she pretended to be asleep, unwilling to face the raw ache inside. Her fingers rested protectively over her stomach, the secret flame growing quietly within her. A new life she longed to protect from the cold calculations of the world around her. Sleep was elusive. She stared at the ceiling, tracing imaginary patterns, wrestling with the tumult of emotions swirling within. Was she merely a convenience? A vessel for an heir? Or was there a place for her beyond the inked contract? Outside, the estate was silent, but for the whispering wind and the distant hum of the city. Savannah's heart broke quietly inside, yearning for answers she was afraid to ask. Jackson, too, lay awake in his room, the mask of control slipping in the stillness. He wrestled with his fears, the fear of losing her, the fear of attachment, the fear of failing the fragile trust she had placed in him. In the quiet hours before dawn, two souls lay apart, yet tethered by invisible threads, each haunted by shadows, each longing for a light that might guide them through the uncertain path ahead. The morning light seeped softly into Savannah's suite, but it brought no warmth to the ache deep within her chest. Days had passed since overhearing the conversation, those cold, measured words between Jackson and his lawyer that shattered the fragile illusion she had clung to. The contract had always been a reality she had to accept, but now it felt like a cage tightening around her soul. She sat on the edge of her bed, the weight of unspoken emotions pressing her down. Her suitcase lay half-packed on the floor, a quiet testament to the turmoil inside. Each piece of clothing folded and stacked felt like a step toward escape, toward reclaiming her dignity from the grasp of uncertainty. Jackson's footsteps echoed faintly outside the door, a haunting reminder of the man she had begun to trust. and to love. The tension between desire and despair twisted within her, a cruel paradox she could neither deny nor embrace. When the door finally opened, Jackson stood there, eyes scanning the scene with a flicker of confusion and pain. His usual composure faltered as he took in the suitcase, the tear-streaked cheeks, the trembling hands. "What are you doing, Savannah?" His voice was tight, barely containing the emotions he rarely showed. She straightened, gathering the shards of her resolve. "I'm leaving." His brow furrowed, hurt and disbelief warring in his gaze. "Why?" She swallowed hard, the truth burning in her throat. "Because I can't stay here pretending anymore. Pretending this is just a contract. I'm not falling apart inside. Pretending that I'm not falling for you." Jackson stepped inside, closing the door gently behind him, the space between them charged with raw vulnerability. "You've been kind, Jackson. Gentle. But I heard what you said to your lawyer. I heard you say that I can go once the children are born, that the deal will be fulfilled, that I owe you nothing." His jaw clenched, eyes searching hers for understanding. "I wasn't eavesdropping," she whispered, voice trembling. "But I needed to know the truth. I needed to prepare myself for the inevitable." Jackson's expression softened, the hardness melting into something more real. Fear, regret, and an aching longing. "I gave you everything," Savannah continued. "My body, trust, and heart. And maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe that was my mistake. But I believed in what we were building. I thought maybe I wasn't just a part of the contract. That maybe you saw me." Her voice cracked under the weight of the confession. "You weren't wrong," Jackson said quietly, stepping closer. "Then why did you sound so ready to let me go?" she whispered. "Like it wouldn't matter. Like it was already over." He reached for her hand, his touch trembling, as if afraid to shatter what fragile hope remained. "Because I thought you would want to leave," he admitted, voice low. "I told myself this was a business deal because I was scared. Scared if I asked for more, you'd walk away." Savannah's breath hitched, disbelief mingling with relief. "I've been falling for you," he confessed, voice breaking. "Every single day. From the first time you smiled at me over that ridiculous cup of herbal tea. From how you looked at this place, not impressed, just unfamiliar. From the night you told me you trusted me." Her suitcase was forgotten, and Savannah stood frozen, her heart pounding in a tumult of emotions. "I meant every touch," Jackson said, eyes glistening. "Every kiss. When you stayed silent this morning, I thought maybe you were pulling away, so I braced myself. I told Lang to prepare the final terms. Not because I wanted you to leave, but because I couldn't bear forcing you to stay." Tears spilled down Savannah's cheeks, the weight of his words settling like a balm. "I thought I was just convenient to you," she whispered. "You were never just that," he said, stepping closer, his voice firm, yet tender. "Not for a single moment." She searched his face, desperate for the truth. "Then why didn't you say anything?" she asked, voice breaking. "Because I was scared," he admitted. "Scared of ruining the only real thing I've ever had." Savannah's eyes shone with unshed tears, her heart unraveling in the soft glow of his confession. "So what do we do now?" she whispered, trembling. Jackson took her hands gently in his, grounding her. "I want you to stay. Not because of the contract, not because of the babies, because I love you." Her lips parted, breath catching on the impossible truth. "You love me," she echoed, voice barely audible. He nodded, eyes shimmering with vulnerability. "I do. I didn't expect it. I didn't plan it. But it happened. and it's the best thing that's ever happened to me." Relief washed over her like a tidal wave, tears flowing freely as she whispered, "I love you too. I tried to hide it. I tried to protect myself. But I fell for you, Jackson. I fell hard." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if afraid to let go, their hearts finally beating in unison. For the first time, the contract dissolved beneath the weight of love, a love forged not in promises on paper, but in the courage to be vulnerable, trust, and choose each other despite the odds. The garden was awash in the soft glow of late afternoon sunlight, the blooms nodding gently in the warm breeze, as if nature itself whispered blessings over the scene. Among the fragrant roses and meticulously trimmed hedges stood Savannah, radiant in a simple ivory dress that spoke not of extravagance but sincerity. She held a single lily in her hand, pure, elegant, a quiet testament to her journey. Jackson's eyes never left her, deep pools of emotion, revealing everything he dared not say aloud. Gone was the cold, distant CEO, replaced by a man stripped bare by love and hope. His tailored suit fit impeccably, yet his vulnerability held the room captive tonight. Close friends gathered, Ruth among them, the steady presence who had watched over Savannah like a guardian angel. And the officiant spoke gently, guiding them through vows not scripted by lawyers, but spoken from open hearts. Jackson took Savannah's hands in his voice steady, yet thick with feeling. "Savannah, when I first saw you, I thought this was a transaction, a necessary arrangement, but you changed everything. You showed me that love isn't about contracts or conditions. It's about choosing someone every day without hesitation." Savannah's eyes glistened as she replied, "Jackson, I came here desperate, afraid, uncertain of my future, but you gave me more than security, trust, kindness, and a love I never thought deserved. I choose you, now and always." As their voices mingled in promise, the estate seemed to exhale, the air thick with the magic of new beginnings. The lilies in her hand mirrored the purity of their commitment, delicate yet enduring. Later, alone on the terrace, wrapped in a soft blanket, Savannah and Jackson shared a quiet moment. A steaming cup of tea warmed their hands, the world beyond momentarily forgotten. "Do you ever think about how it all started?" Savannah asked softly, eyes tracing the stars just beginning to twinkle overhead. Jackson chuckled, a sound rich with vulnerability. "Every day, I was terrified." She leaned against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her cheek. "So was I." He brushed a stray curl from her face, whispering, "I just wore better armor." Savannah smiled, the tension between them eased by shared honesty. "It doesn't feel like a contract anymore." "It never was," Jackson replied, voice unwavering. "It was always the beginning of something real." The gentle rustle of vines above them seemed to echo their words, wrapping them in a cocoon of peace. Savannah thought about the narrow line they had crossed, from obligation to love, fear to trust. It was a path paved not by perfection, but by courage and grace. In that moment, she understood that love could be found in the most unlikely places, in contracts signed under desperate circumstances, in quiet touches and stolen glances, in the willingness to open one's heart despite the risks. Their family was growing, not through perfect planning, but through a leap of faith. And that was enough. As dawn crept softly through the bedroom curtains, Savannah lay beneath the soft sheets, a gentle flutter stirring low in her belly. She smiled without opening her eyes, savoring the life blossoming within her. Still asleep beside her, Jackson wrapped an arm protectively around her waist. His breath warmed her neck, as he drifted between wakefulness and dreams, fingers brushing her skin until sleep claimed him again. She turned to face him, studying the quiet strength etched into his features. The man who had once stood across a glass desk, discussing heirs and arrangements. Now, he was unguarded, vulnerable, filled with a quiet affection and joy that no contract could ever promise. She kissed his forehead softly and slipped from the bed, bare feet padding toward the balcony where the morning unfolded. The sky was flushed with golden pinks, and the gardens below glistened with dew, scenting the air with the promise of spring. Savannah wrapped her arms protectively around her belly and closed her eyes. 3 heartbeats beat within her, small and steady, a miracle born not just of biology, but of love's resilience. Behind her, the door creaked open, and Jackson appeared shirtless, eyes heavy with sleep, but shining with a newfound tenderness. "Why are you up?" he mumbled, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. She smiled. They kicked. He knelt beside her, pressing an ear gently against her stomach. Hey, not without me, okay?" She laughed softly, resting a hand on his head. "They're going to know your voice before they know the light." Jackson looked up, eyes shining with wonder. "I want them to know they're safe," he whispered. "That they're wanted, not just planned." Savannah's throat tightened. "They will," she said, "because they'll see it every day." He pulled her close, the morning breeze wrapping around them like an invisible vow. "I never told you," he said softly, "but I knew after that first night, when you fell asleep in my arms, knew I'd never be able to let you go." She smiled, her heart full. "Good, because I never wanted to go." Together, they stood as the sun rose higher, wrapped in a silence of trust and love, a promise that no matter the past, the future would be theirs to write. The days that unfolded were woven with quiet moments, small acts of care and attention that slowly transformed the fragile bond between Savannah and Jackson into something beautifully solid. Once a vast and intimidating fortress, the estate began feeling more like home, where love could gently take root. Jackson was still the man of few words, his expressions guarded and deliberate, but with Savannah, a softness seeped through. He learned how she preferred her tea, her stories about her childhood garden in Georgia, and the quiet passions that had sustained her through hardship. He noticed when her laughter didn't quite reach her eyes, when a shadow crossed her smile after a private thought. Their days became a series of subtle exchanges, the brush of a hand against a back as she drifted to sleep, a kiss planted lightly on the edge of her jaw before he slipped away at dawn. Once awkward and hesitant, these touches felt natural and necessary, a language of their own. Yet, neither dared to speak aloud the words hanging between them. Savannah feared naming what they were building might shatter the fragile peace. Jackson, too, held his feelings close, wary of risking the only real connection he had ever known. Still, the space between them hummed with unspoken promises. One afternoon, after a routine appointment with the private physician, Savannah wandered the estate's east wing, her thoughts a tangled knot of hope and fear. The doctor had hinted that she might already be pregnant, a secret flame burning quietly within her chest. As she approached Jackson's office, she paused, her hand resting lightly on the polished wood of the slightly ajar door. Voices drifted out, Jackson's calm, steady tone, and the familiar sharp voice of Mr. Lang, the legal advisor. Savannah's breath caught as she listened. "The terms are unambiguous," Lang said. "Once the children are born, she is entitled to the final installment and the property transfer." Jackson's voice was quiet, but firm. "I want her taken care of." Lang's next question hung heavily in the air. "What's the plan if she chooses to stay?" There was a long pause before Jackson answered, his voice almost unreadable. "She's free to go." That was always the agreement. Savannah's heart ached with the weight of his words. The promise of care felt hollow against the reality of possible departure. She stepped back silently, the carpet muffling her retreat as the estate walls grew colder and taller. No longer a home, but a holding place. She ran, not from the house, but back to the sanctuary of her suite, the only refuge from the storm raging inside. Closing the door behind her, Savannah pressed her back to it, arms wrapped tight around herself, as if to hold together the pieces of a breaking heart. The dichotomy between the warmth of Jackson's touch and the starkness of his words tore at her. She thought of how he held her, the gentle caress of her wrist at breakfast, the softness of his voice when he whispered goodnight. Could it all be just kindness? A respectful partnership born from necessity? Or was she truly falling in love? The question haunted her, fracturing the quiet of the night. She did not come down for dinner that evening. When Jackson knocked softly, she feigned sleep, unable to face him or the swirling doubts within. Alone in the dark, she stared at the ceiling, hands resting protectively over her swelling belly. If the doctor's hopes were right, life was growing inside her, fragile, miraculous, and uncertain. Tears traced silent paths down her cheeks as she grappled with the tangled emotions, hope and fear, love and loss, trust and betrayal. Outside, the estate held its breath in the night, while inside, Savannah vowed to protect her heart, for the sake of the life blossoming within and for her dignity. She would fulfill the contract, yes, but when the time came, she would walk away with her head held high, even if it broke her. In the quiet solitude of her room, she clung to this resolve, unaware that across the hall, Jackson lay awake, wrestling with his demons, fearing the very loss he had feared most. Two hearts, once strangers bound by contract, now entangled in a fragile dance of love and doubt, poised on the edge of an uncertain tomorrow. The soft hum of the estate was punctuated only by the quiet footsteps of Savannah as she retreated deeper into herself, the walls of her suite closing in, like shadows growing longer at dusk. Days had blurred into one another since she had overheard that conversation, words that weighed heavily, casting a cold veil over every stolen moment of tenderness she once cherished. Jackson's presence, once a balm to her restless heart, now felt like a looming specter, an unspoken question she dared not ask, and a distance she couldn't bridge. The man who had wrapped her in warmth and protection seemed further away than ever, his eyes guarded behind a mask she could no longer penetrate. Savannah found herself retreating more, avoiding the spaces where their worlds collided. She skipped meals in the grand dining hall, walking the expansive gardens alone, letting the rustling leaves and whispering winds carry away the ache she could not voice. One evening, Jackson stood outside her door, a hesitant knock breaking the thick silence. "Savannah," he called softly. "Please." She did not respond. Minutes stretched until his footsteps faded, leaving her with the ghosts of doubt. In the solitude of her room, Savannah pressed her palm against her stomach, feeling the gentle flutter of life growing inside, a delicate reminder of hope amidst despair. Yet, even that miracle could not entirely quell the storm within. Meanwhile, Jackson grappled with his turmoil. The stoic CEO who once believed love was an illusion was ensnared in emotions he couldn't command. Fear of losing Savannah warred with pride, and regret gnawed at the edges of his carefully constructed walls. He spent nights pacing the vast corridors, replaying every word, every look, searching for a way to bridge the widening chasm. Their unspoken pain became a silent rift, a gulf neither dared to cross, each believing the other had already stepped away. As sunlight filtered through the estate's grand windows one morning, Savannah found a note slipped beneath her door, a simple message penned in Jackson's unmistakable script. "I'm here when you're ready." Tears blurred her vision as she clutched the paper, a fragile thread connecting two souls adrift. The days followed were a delicate dance of near encounters and missed chances. A glance across a room, a brush of fingers in passing. Moments charged with longing, yet restrained by fear. Savannah vowed to protect her heart in quiet solitude, even as it quietly broke. Jackson, too, wrestled with the reality that love, once ignited, could not be extinguished by contracts or silence. As winter's chills seeped into the walls, two hearts stood on the precipice, yearning for connection, yet trembling before the leap. The fragile peace Savannah had sought was shattered in a moment, caught unguarded between the polished halls of the estate and the raw truth that had been simmering beneath the surface. It was an ordinary afternoon, turned irrevocably significant. A turning point neither had expected, but both could no longer avoid. Savannah crept toward Jackson's office, which had become a sanctuary and battleground. The soft murmur of voices drew her near, curiosity and dread weaving a knot in her stomach. Through the slight crack in the door, she glimpsed Jackson seated across from Mr. Lang, the sharp-eyed legal advisor, whose presence often heralded uncomfortable discussions. Their conversation was deliberate, their words carrying weighty consequences. "I need clarity," Lang pressed. "What if she chooses to stay beyond the terms? Are we prepared for that?" Jackson's gaze was steady, but his voice betrayed a hint of unease. "She has every right to leave, but if she doesn't, we deal with it." The finality of those words hit Savannah like a cold wave. Her breath caught, chest tightening, as the walls closed around her. She retreated silently, footsteps muffled by the thick carpet, heart pounding with betrayal and heartbreak. In the solitude of her suite, she grappled with the sharp edges of reality. The man who held her gently, kissed her with reverence, and whispered promises in the dark was also bound by contracts and obligations that might not include her. That night, the silence between them was palpable. Savannah lay awake, tears tracing quiet paths down her cheeks as she wrestled with the cruel paradox of love and loss. Jackson, pacing in his solitude, battled the storm raging inside, a tempest of fear, regret, and longing that refused to be silenced. Days passed in a fragile truce, each avoiding the chasm that yawned between them. But the heart, once cracked, cannot remain whole without mending. One evening, driven by desperation and love, Jackson found Savannah alone in the garden, the fading light casting shadows that danced around her like whispered secrets. He approached quietly, voice soft yet urgent. "Savannah, we can't keep living like this. The silence is tearing us apart." She turned to face him, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I don't know if I can trust the promises anymore, Jackson. Words can be broken. Contracts can be ended." He stepped closer, courage kindling in his gaze. "I don't want to lose you. Not now. Not ever." Their hands found each other, fingers entwining in a silent plea. "I love you," he confessed, voice trembling with vulnerability. "Not because of any contract, not for the future or the children, but because of you." Savannah's breath hitched, the walls around her heart crumbling in the face of such raw truth. "I love you too," she whispered, tears spilling freely. "I'm scared, but I'm yours." In that moment, beneath the fading light and amidst the blooming night, two souls chose to bridge the divide, not with words written in ink, but with hearts laid bare. The path ahead remained uncertain, fraught with challenges and fears, but together they would face whatever came. their love a fragile flame burning brighter against the darkness. The dawn spilled its pale gold through the sheer curtains, casting a gentle glow across the room, where Savannah lay nestled against Jackson's chest. The rhythmic beating of his heart beneath her ear was a steady anchor in a world still unsteady, a soft cadence that promised safety amidst uncertainty. Morning light carried the weight of new beginnings and the fragile hope that had blossomed between them. Grand declarations or sweeping gestures had not marked their journey, but by the quiet accumulation of trust, small moments etched into the fabric of their days. Jackson traced lazy circles along Savannah's bare back, his touch feather-light, yet imbued with unspoken reassurance. "How are you feeling?" he murmured, voice husky from sleep. Savannah turned her head, eyes meeting his with a softness that spoke volumes. Nervous, she confessed, a shy smile tugging at her lips. But ready. His smile deepened, a flicker of warmth breaking through the usual reserve. Ready to take the next step? She nodded, heart fluttering with anticipation and the sweet ache of vulnerability. The day unfolded with careful tenderness. Jackson led Savannah through the procedures and appointments necessary to ensure the well-being of both mother and the new life growing within. The sterile corridors of the clinic were softened by his unwavering presence, his hand never leaving hers. During a quiet moment between appointments, Savannah watched Jackson with admiration and affection. The man who had once seemed so distant now revealed layers of depth, a protector, a partner, a man learning to love beyond the confines of control. He caught her gaze, a playful glint lighting his eyes. Lost in thought, she laughed softly, just realizing how far we've come. Jackson's hand lifted to cup her cheek, thumb brushing away a stray tear she hadn't noticed falling. "We're only beginning." That evening, the estate's warmth embraced them as they returned home. Savannah's suite, once a place of solitude, now echoed with the quiet hum of shared dreams. Their conversations deepened, about hopes, fears, and the uncharted territory of becoming a family. Jackson listened intently, his usual reserve giving way to vulnerability, mirroring her own. As night fell, the intimate dance between them continued, each touch a question, each kiss an answer. The boundaries of this contract blurred, replaced by the language of hearts entwined. Jackson's lips found Savannah's with a reverence that spoke of newfound devotion. "You make me feel," he whispered between kisses, voice trembling with honesty. Her fingers tangled in his hair, drawing him closer as passion wove through their connection. They moved together with a tenderness born of trust and discovery, exploring the depths of vulnerability and desire. When the moment came, it was not rushed or dictated by obligation, but a symphony of shared emotions, a crescendo of love expressed through breathless whispers and lingering touches. Savannah's body arched beneath him, every sensation a revelation. Jackson held her with a tenderness that shattered walls, proving that love could be patient, gentle, and fierce. In the quiet aftermath, they lay tangled in each other's arms, breaths mingling in the soft glow of candlelight. Words were unnecessary. Their hearts spoke in the language of silence and presence. That night, the contract ceased to be a mere agreement. It became the foundation of a bond deeper than paper or promise, a love cultivated through courage, honesty, and the willingness to surrender to the unknown. Together, they stepped into the future, not as two strangers bound by circumstance, but as partners choosing each other daily, embracing the vulnerability that genuine love demands. The estate, once an imposing fortress of glass and stone, now breathed with the gentle rhythm of life, a rhythm synchronized to the quiet moments Savannah and Jackson shared. Days unfolded like delicate petals, revealing layers of intimacy carefully nurtured beneath the surface of their fledgling relationship. Morning light filtered through linen curtains, casting a soft glow over the bedroom where Savannah stirred beneath the covers. The subtle flutter in her belly was a whispered reminder of the life growing within, a miracle unfolding in the sanctuary they had begun to build together. Jackson lay beside her, and his chest's steady rise and fall was a comforting melody that steadied her heart. His fingers traced patterns along her arm, touching a silent vow and caressing an unspoken promise. Over breakfast, their conversation was gentle, peppered with laughter and the quiet exchange of hopes. Jackson listened as Savannah spoke of her dreams, simple, profound desires shaped by years of struggle and resilience. He shared his fears and uncertainties, the vulnerability behind the facade of control. Their connection deepened not through grand declarations, but through these fragile threads, shared stories, quiet understanding, and the trust that grew stronger with each passing day. In the afternoons, they wandered the estate's sprawling gardens, hands brushing lightly, smiles exchanged in the soft glow of sunlight filtering through the trees. The world beyond the walls faded away, leaving only the two in a cocoon of growing affection. Jackson observed Savannah with a new tenderness, the way her eyes lit up at the sight of blooming lilies, the subtle ways she found beauty in small things. He remembered her laughter long after she had turned away, a melody that lingered in his mind. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of lavender and gold, they sat together on the terrace, wrapped in a shared blanket. A steaming cup of tea warmed their hands, and the air was thick with unspoken feelings. Savannah's head rested against Jackson's shoulder, her breath steadying as the quiet enveloped them. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked softly. Jackson smiled, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Every day. I was scared then, so much fear wrapped up in trying to control everything." She nodded, squeezing his hand. "So was I. But now, it feels like something real, something worth holding on to." His arm tightened around her, a silent affirmation. "It's not a contract anymore. It's us." The simplicity of those words resonated deeply, a promise forged not in ink, but in hearts laid bare. As night embraced the estate, their bond grew in the quiet spaces between words and touches. Each glance held meaning, each smile a reassurance. They navigated the complexities of love with grace, acknowledging fears while choosing hope. Savannah marveled at the transformation, not just in Jackson, but in herself. The walls she had built to protect her heart began to crumble, replaced by a fragile openness that allowed love to bloom. In the stillness of their room, beneath the soft glow of candlelight, they found solace in each other's presence, a sanctuary where vulnerability was met with kindness, and trust was the foundation of every embrace. Together, they embraced the uncertainty of the journey ahead, knowing that love, in its most valid form, was not defined by perfection, but by the courage to grow, forgive, and choose each other daily. The gentle hum of the clinic was a stark contrast to the storm of emotions swirling within Savannah as she sat beside Jackson, their fingers entwined in quiet solidarity. The sterile walls bore witness to the most profound journey they had embarked upon, one not measured in contracts or obligations, but in the delicate rhythms of new life. The ultrasound technician's voice was soft, tender, as she traced the wand gently across Savannah's rounded belly. The monitor flickered to life, casting an ethereal glow over their faces. 3 tiny heartbeats pulsed steadily, strong and sure, a symphony of hope that filled the room with unspoken wonder. Savannah's breath caught in her throat, tears welling as she glanced at Jackson. His hand squeezed hers tightly, eyes wide with disbelief and awe. The man who once measured everything in logic and control was now undone by the miracle growing inside her. "They're healthy," the technician said with a gentle smile, "growing exactly as they should." Jackson let out a breath that was half laugh, half gasp, leaning closer to the screen, as if trying to imprint the moment in his memory. Savannah turned to look at him, her heart swelling with their unspoken promise. His face was a canvas of wonder, love, and vulnerability she had never seen before. "You okay?" she whispered. He didn't take his eyes from the screen. "I've never been better." As the scan ended, Jackson helped her sit up with careful hands, his touch protective and tender. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders, but so did an unshakable resolve. Walking out into the bright hallway, Jackson stopped suddenly. Savannah turned, puzzled as he dropped to one knee before her, lips brushing gently over the swell of her belly. "Hey there," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. "I know we haven't officially met yet, but your mom and I can't wait to see your faces." Savannah's throat tightened as she reached up to cup his face, eyes shining with tears. "They already know love," she whispered. "They already do." Hand in hand, they left the clinic, stepping into the golden light of spring. The world outside seemed to hold its breath, as if sharing in their quiet joy. 2 months earlier, in a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by close friends, Savannah and Jackson had pledged themselves to each other, not because of contracts, but because of love. The garden bloomed around them, the scent of lilies mingling with whispered vows that came straight from their hearts. Their family was growing faster than they had imagined, but every step felt like a gift, a testament to their leap of faith together. Back at the estate, the nursery was already coming to life. 3 hand-painted cribs stood side by side, soft pastel colors, inviting the tiny souls who would soon fill the rooms with laughter and light. Shelves lined with storybooks and a rocking chair waiting patiently in the corner spoke of nights filled with whispered lullabies and dreams. That evening, Savannah and Jackson sat wrapped in a blanket on the terrace, the warm tea steaming between them as the sun dipped below the horizon. "Do you ever think about how it started?" Savannah asked softly, eyes tracing the first stars twinkling overhead. Jackson gave a low laugh, a sound rich with memory and vulnerability. "Every day. I was scared." "So was I," she admitted, leaning against him. "But now it feels like home." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining with a certainty that steadied her heart. "It never was just a contract," Jackson whispered. "It was always a beginning." Savannah smiled, the wind rustling the vines above them like nature's blessing. "I used to think love had to look a certain way, but love looks like this," he said, voice steady. 3 lives stirred gently within her, a family born not of perfect plans, but of courage, trust, and the quiet strength of 2 hearts choosing each other repeatedly. In the stillness of the night, as the estate settled into peaceful slumber, Savannah closed her eyes with a heart full of hope for the family they were becoming, and the promise of all tomorrows yet to come. The first morning light crept softly across the bedroom curtains, painting the world in gentle hues of gold and rose. Savannah stirred beneath the weight of silken sheets, a tender flutter deep within her belly, the first gentle reminder of life, growing quietly and steadily. Her breath caught in a silent smile, eyes still closed as she savored the promise of new beginnings. Beside her, Jackson lay still, the soft rise and fall of his chest, a steady rhythm that calmed the restless thoughts swirling in her mind. his arm draped protectively around her waist, his breath warm against the curve of her neck. There was a sacredness in the peaceful silence between them, an intimacy forged not in grand gestures, but in the simple presence of shared vulnerability. She turned slowly, tracing the familiar lines of his face in the early light. The man who had once stood across a glass desk, cold and guarded, was now unmasked. His features softened by love's quiet touch, his eyes reflecting the depth of a soul transformed. The sharp angles of power had given way to gentle strength, a warmth that filled the space between them like a soft fire. Jackson stirred, eyelids fluttering open to meet hers, the faintest smile touching his lips. "Morning," he whispered, voice thick with sleep and affection. Savannah reached up, fingers brushing through the tousled strands of his hair. "Morning," she replied, heart swelling with a tenderness that words could scarcely contain. They lay wrapped in each other's arms, the world outside still and distant, while inside, the quiet symphony of their love played on, steady, enduring, real. In these moments, the contracts and arrangements that had once defined their relationship faded into insignificance, replaced by something infinitely more profound. Love, in its most valid form, was not born of convenience or calculation, but of choice and courage. It was found in the willingness to be vulnerable, trust, and hold one another through the uncertainty. Savannah's thoughts drifted to their journey, the fears faced, the walls broken down, the hesitant steps towards something neither had dared hope for. They had started as strangers bound by necessity, but now stood as partners bound by heart. She smiled softly, pressing a kiss to his forehead, a silent promise of forever. Jackson's hand found hers, fingers entwining in a quiet vow. "I never imagined this would be our story," he murmured. "From contracts to love, from strangers to family." Savannah nodded, eyes shining with unshed tears. "It's more beautiful than I ever dared dream." Together, they rose to greet the day, their family growing with each heartbeat, each breath, each whispered word of love and hope. The nursery awaited their touch, filled with the soft glow of anticipation. 3 tiny cribs stood ready to cradle new life, symbolizing the future they had chosen to build together. Storybooks lined the shelves, waiting to unfold tales of wonder and dreams. A rocking chair, worn yet inviting, promised countless nights of lullabies and quiet solace. Life stretched before them with all its unpredictability and grace. A journey not without challenges, but rich with the promise of shared strength and unwavering devotion. Savannah and Jackson stepped forward hand in hand, their hearts aligned in a melody only they could hear. Love had found them most unexpectedly, teaching them that beginnings mattered less than the choices they made each day. In the stillness of their home, wrapped in the quiet warmth of dawn, they understood that love was not perfect. It was real. It was messy. It was vulnerable. But above all, it was theirs. And so, with 3 little heartbeats growing strong within Savannah, and a future unfolding before them, there forever began. Not as a contract written on paper, but as a story written in the language of love, trust, and the courage to believe. The morning light spilled gently through the curtains, bathing the room in a soft glow that seemed to cradle the quiet moments unfolding within. Savannah stirred beneath the warmth of the sheets, a tender flutter deep within her belly, reminding her of the life blossoming quietly inside. Her breath caught in a delicate smile as she traced the curve of Jackson's sleeping face. A man transformed from the cold architect of contracts into the tender guardian of their shared dreams. Jackson's arm wrapped protectively around her waist, his breath warm against her neck. The silence between them was sacred, a silent conversation of hearts finally in harmony. In this peaceful cocoon, The past's cold contracts and uncertainties melted away, replaced by love's fragile yet unshakable promise. Their journey hadn't been perfect. It had been messy, filled with doubts and fears, silent battles and brave confessions. Yet, it was theirs. A love forged not from grand declarations, but from the courage to be vulnerable, the choice to trust, and the decision to build a future together. Savannah kissed Jackson's forehead softly, her lips a whisper of a promise. To love, cherish, and face whatever the days ahead might bring, together. Jackson stirred, opening his eyes to meet hers, the faintest smile lighting his gaze. "Morning," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. "Morning," she replied, her heart full. Together, they rose to greet the new day. A day that held the promise of little feet pattering through their home, the laughter of children filling sunlit rooms, and the warmth of a family born not from obligation, but from love. Their nursery stood ready, soft pastels and gentle shadows welcoming the tiny lives growing inside Savannah. 3 cribs, 3 stories yet to be told, and countless moments yet to be lived. Each detail whispered hope and devotion, from hand-painted walls to shelves lined with books and lullabies waiting to be sung. Life stretched before them, uncertain but bright, a tapestry woven from the threads of trust, forgiveness, and unwavering commitment. As they stood hand in hand, hearts beating in unison, Savannah and Jackson knew their story was not one of perfection, but of resilience. Love, they had learned, was found not in flawless beginnings, but in the grace to choose each other, day after day. To you who have journeyed alongside their tale, remember, love often arrives quietly and unexpectedly when we dare to open our hearts. It is not flawless or straightforward, but is real and worth every risk. If their story has touched your heart and reminded you of the power of hope and the beauty of second chances, share it with those who need to hear it. Let the world know that love, in all its imperfect glory, is always waiting to find you. And as you walk your path, may you have the courage to trust, forgive, and love deeply and fearlessly. Keep believing in the love that finds you when you least expect it, and never lets you go.